Hello and welcome to Custom Glass Pre-Start for boom lifts. Today we're going to be looking at our Genie S65 boom and doing a pre-start check before we operate the equipment. We want to do this for safety to make sure that the boom's going to operate and is staying in good working order. First off, when we go to start our pre-check, we want to walk up to the machine, check the ground and the area around it for any puddles, leaks, or anything that could cause an issue. Next thing we kind of want to do, it's a quick visual inspection of the hoses and the control wires going up that are exposed. Make sure they haven't been snagged or damaged in any way. Just starting to leak, anything like that, just at all these joints. We'll kind of take a quick look around here and then we'll look back at that joint where it comes around the boom. We'll want to check the tires, make sure they're not flat. This particular boom has foam-filled tires, so they'll never go flat. It's kind of a nice option. And then again, like we stated earlier, we'll take a visual look underneath the boom for big puddles of oil or fuel that may have started. Again, one of the other critical areas is this main lift arm. All the hoses and connections here, checking for excessive wear and or leaks. We'll be looking at the hubs, the drive hubs on the inside of the wheel to make sure they're not leaking excessively. And each one of the hydraulic rams, we want to check each one of them for any kind of leaks. This is just a quick visual inspection. Just kind of make it a point to go around it and look for major damage. First thing we do is check our fluid levels. On this machine, we have fuel here, and it's a semi-visible tank. Our fuel level happens to be right at 30 gallons, which will be great for a day's worth of work. Second, we'll check our hydraulic fluid. Our hydraulic gauge is right here. We want to be above these black lines. When it's hot and cold, it will vary. If your boom is extended out or retracted in, it can cause some differences. We do not want to be below the black line here, and we do not want to be above this heavy black line here. If we go above, it potentially could spew hydraulic fluid out and on the ground, make a big mess. If we go below, the machine will not operate properly. Third, what I like to do is always check the engine oil before we start it. We'll open the hood, engine's here, we'll pull our dipstick and make sure we're staying between the notches on the dipstick. Our fluid level is actually just a little bit high, but we are sitting on a slight incline, so that's okay. Next thing we want to check is our coolant level. The easy quick check is right up here on our burp tank, and it's got to be between low and full in the normal zone. Last thing before we start the engine, just make a quick note of the engine hours on our last service. This machine was serviced last at 5,480 hours. We don't want to run over 250 hours on between services. Just like your car, you want to try to service it at every 3,000 miles. You can see on this filter and this filter up here, it shows the date that it was changed and the hours that were logged when it was changed. And before we close the hood, the last thing you kind of want to do is just give a quick visual inspection of all the hoses, fittings, and connectors to make sure that there's no major leaks or anything new developing that hasn't showed up on the ground. As we mentioned earlier, we want to make a note of how many hours are on this service on the machine. We showed you where the hours are noted on the filter for the last oil change. The hour meter right here keeps track of how many hours we're at in between changes. This particular oil change has 6 hours of runtime on it. So now all the fluids are good, fuel's good, oil's good. Now we're about ready to start the machine. We'll turn the key on. When you turn the key towards the ground operation, we'll be able to operate it from this lower control panel on the ground. We have an emergency stop button. This particular style of stop button's got an arrow around it. You want to twist it to unlock it and allow it to snap itself out. You don't want to just yank it out because you'll break the button. two things we want to know. In cold weather, we want to give that engine a chance to warm up before we start turning it. With a diesel engine, we have glow plugs. We'll push and hold that over for about 10 seconds when it's cold outside. And then we can reach over and start our engine. To hold the safety switch, which is right here, to actually operate booms. If you don't hold this one, they won't run. On at platform, we can operate the lower control, so we'll have to be standing on the ground to operate. To operate from the boom, we'll move it over to the upper platform. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and fire it up, and we're gonna switch it to upper platform controls. When we do that, we turn the key over. If the engine shuts off, that's okay, because the emergency stop button, typically up at the control panel at the basket, needs to be reset. So we can start it up there and we'll reset that stop switch. We're getting ready to get in the boom and operate it from the platform as it's intended. Before you get into the boom and start operating it, you want to make sure you have your fall protection on. I've got mine set up and ready to go. One of the items on our checklist is the operator's manual. If you're not familiar with the machine you're going to be using that day, get the operator's manual out, review it, get familiar with it so you know where the safety switches are before you start operation. Once you get in the boom, you want to make sure you tie yourself into that basket so you don't get thrown out if you go over a large bump and the basket really bounces a bunch. Next thing we want to do, go ahead and be ready to fire it up. We'll pull, if it's already up, pull the emergency stop switch up. Again, this boom has the same icons at each toggle switch to start, for glow plugs, extend, retract, that sort of thing. Now that the boom is running, we want to check the controls, make sure they are all not functioning until we put our foot on the safety switch. Then we can move our boom and it functions as desired. We're going to move the boom up, down, left, right, out,